Thank you for joining today's webinar, and at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Bill.
Great. Thanks a lot, Michelle. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in our monthly HBK Risk Advisory Series. My name is Bill Heaven. If you've joined before, you've heard me talk before. I'm a Senior Director here at HBK, and I'd like to, again, thank everyone for joining us today. Today we have a special guest. Let's see, get the slide advancing here. Michelle, am I not seeing the slides advancing, or are they?
We see slide 3 here, Bill.
Okay, so for some reason I'm blank, so I'll refresh.
You want me to advance the slides?
Yeah, go ahead, see if you can.
Okay, there we go.
All right, I'll have to refresh, but so again, sorry about that technical glitch there, everyone. Like I was starting to say, we have a special guest this morning, Mike Janko from Goodyear. I've known Mike for about 12 years, and he's a true expert in the field. So go ahead, let's just keep advancing here, although I'm going from memory here. So a few housekeeping issues as we get started this morning. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 hour of CPE credit. In order to receive the credit, there's 4 questions embedded within Mike's presentation, and we'll get to those. We'll do a stopping point and have you answer the question if you're interested in receiving CPE. And the 4th question is just a yes, no. That's yes, I want CPE, or no, I don't. And then based on a yes answer, we'll get a CPE certificate out to you later on this week, early next week. We also are going to be monitoring the message center. So if you have any issues with the On24 platform like I'm doing, the best thing is just to refresh your browser. That'll most likely clear things up. And if you're able to type into the Q&A, we'll be monitoring that, myself and Michelle, and we can try to address anything that's coming up. If you have questions, you can queue up a question for Mike in that Q&A chat, and we'll save them till the end. But just monitor that. We're going to be sending out a link later in the week to be a copy of today's slide deck. In addition, we'll put a recording in there that if you wanted to go back and review something in the presentation, you'll be able to do that. Again, that's our agenda that I just passed through, and then these are our learning objectives, which are really the takeaways from today's webinar. So what you should be able to gain from making the time investment to join today. Here is, I think this is Mike's biography. Like I said, I've known him for quite a few years here. He's worked with Goodyear. Before that, he was with Stouffer's. He's the expert that I go to when I have questions on business continuity. And Mike and I were talking about a few weeks back when I was trying to talk him into doing this webinar for me, which really wasn't hard at all. He's very much a true professional, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to do it." And so he's truly an expert in his field, and he's actually even written a book that we're going to be. We'll dedicate a slide or two towards the end of the presentation for Mike to talk a little bit about his book. Mike, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Bill, for the introduction. I'm really glad to join the HBK team here today and discuss how internal audit is really a critical partner of Goodyear's business continuity teams. You know, there's a lot of folks, I think, that step back. They're cautious when they hear internal audit. I'm the exact opposite. I see internal audit as a trusted partner of ours. We've had remarkable improvements on how we're working through our maturity model after we've had internal audit actually go out to facilities and ask the same questions that we think are cascading to our team. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And as we progress through, I'll pause at times if there's something significant that I think you might have a question on, or we'll also be watching the the team chat or Bill or Michelle can bring up if you have any questions. I'm really interested to see at the end on how what we do at Goodyear compares with what you're thinking about, what you've seen, and what you're presently doing in your audits. So yeah, thank you, Bill.
Right, yeah, that's great. And I can, Mike is not just telling stories there, because when I first joined Goodyear, I was in internal audit, the IT portion, and would work with Mike, and he was always very open to working with audit, where you didn't get that reaction to some of the groups, but Mike was definitely great to work with. Here's my bio here, is the same one that you've been used to seeing. I have a dual role here at HBK. I help internally with our IT security function, as well as doing some external facing projects with clients, as well as doing this monthly webinar to kind of try to spread the word about risk management. And without further ado, I am going to turn things over to Mike. So Mike, you can do the advancing now, and I'm going to refresh and see if I can get a copy of the slides to display for myself. But I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Bill. Let me give a little intro to Goodyear. So Goodyear continues to be an iconic company for over 125 years. I've had the pleasure of being part of Goodyear for over 25 years. So make sure you keep that in mind. I haven't been here 125, I've been here 25 of the 125. So we're a $20 billion plus company. We have over 75,000 actual associates now, and we're involved with 57 major manufacturing plants in 23 countries. Some of our locations are up to 3 million square feet each. We have a presence in every country in the world when you look at our manufacturing, retail, logistics, supply chain sectors. You also see we have some very, very smart people working here who work at our innovation centers with over 6,400 patents. Actually, with them pending, it's over 7,600 patents. Here's some additional information on our global footprint. You see the sales in the Americas, in EMEA and Asia Pacific. And Bill and I were talking earlier on how we're structured. Our North and America are called the Americas. We also have a fourth business center or operational center called Global Technology. So we have people who work in the technology function that are embedded in these regions, but they have a separate operational budget and function. So we consider them, through business continuity, our fourth different business unit. You can see we have some strong global presence here. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Okay, great. So yeah, for those of you that want to receive CP for today's webinar, this is your first checkpoint question. So go ahead and give us A, B, C, or D on that one. And then Michelle, let me know when, if you can tell when we've got most of the audience responding. Okay, back to you, Mike.
All right, thanks, Bill. So to have excellence in operational resilience, you have to align with your organization's strategy. And we have a strategy roadmap. So if you look in Goodyear.com, you look at our global website, you'll see the focus of the entire company is to enable mobility. That was coming into this year. Now we have a new CEO and president. We may have a shift in gears in where we're going, but presently that's our focus. We support responsible operations by identifying and mitigating risks. So Better Future is tied to our sustainability initiative. So it's not only how we produce tires and how we manage the process, it's with a focus on better future and sustainability. And once again, we are part of responsible operations with a risk-based focused thinking. On the right there, you'll see that we have one page dedicated in our corporate responsibility report to business continuity. So the latest version is coming out right about now. It may even be out today. But that is led by our sustainability and communications team. And we kind of focused last year on what we do, what steps we take across all our regions to identify risks, to identify critical processes, and then what happens when we engage. And in 2023, what you'll see coming out is we managed 113 different events and crises. And the statistics are really kind of eye-popping when you think about some of them on how we were involved. The way we look at them, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is were we involved less than a day? An example of that would be there's an earthquake in Turkey. We have a plant in Izmit. We need to assess if there was an impact to us, to our associates, to the business, to the supply chain. There wasn't. It was a check. It took 1 day. That same event could be, yes, there was an earthquake. It did some facility damage. We're down for a day. So we would categorize that from a day to a week. Something very severe affected the plant, affected our associates. We have a large-scale effort to address it. That would be more than a week. So we're looking at a day or less, 1 day, a day to a week, or more than a week. We've had over, I think it was nearly 26% of all the events that we managed took over a week. So that's large-scale involvement on very, very critical events that could have an impact to our associates or business operations. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on how we track actual incidents, how we identify risks, and how we identify forward thinking what our top operational risks will be in the coming year. So here you see what we're talking about, our purpose, process, and outcome. This is a term that's used in continual improvement, in lean thinking, to get the team focused. So some call it purpose, outcome, and process. We call it purpose, process, and outcome. Our team's purpose is to be the most resilient global tire manufacturer. A lot of the efforts that we have underway are to do that with a global presence, and you'll hear about my definition, our definition of resilience here shortly. It's a major effort. What's the process? We're aligning with all of our business units to effectively implement activities supporting operational resilience. What's the outcome of all this? We're avoiding complexity that compromises quality. We're implementing activities that promote successful strategic execution, and we maintain a continual improvement approach that's led to our success. Think about that. Strategic execution, and that involves strategic, and involves the tactical teams, and involves a large-scale effort to make sure that we are focused on being that resilient global tire manufacturer. Continual improvement is embedded in everything that we do. And after a while, whatever different organizations call continual improvement, it could be 5S, it could be optimization, it could be various things. It all falls back on the Deming model of plan, do, check, act. And after a while, you start to think that way in all the actions you take. Where are we now? How are we executing? Were there any gaps? What do we need to improve, and how are we going to do it? A definition I've included in the bottom there on resilience is the ability to prepare for, adapt, and change conditions and recover rapidly from operational disruptions. A more common one from many sources is to be tough. What are some of the standard certification and ISO compliance requirements for us? At Goodyear, we need to be compliant with ISO 9001. That's quality, ISO quality standard. There's two parts to that. One is IATF 16949. That's for the auto industry. And then you also have AS 9100, which is for the aircraft industry. So these three are tied together. How do these audits occur? Well, we have an external auditor come to our headquarters once a year for each of these audits. We get a large group of teams together that all represent some of the functions that are in the specific protocols that are in the ISO standard. For us, for business continuity, I meet with the auditor, and what they're interested in that relates to operational resilience is, how do you identify risks? What's critical to you? Do you plan for it? How do you test your plans? Are all your teams aligned with the global process, with the regional process? Can you show us the evidence? And they also have a very keen focus on IT security as of the last few years because of the potential impacts of ransomware. Here's some of the other standards that I'd like to reference. DRI International is the organization that certifies individuals like me in business continuity. There's 10 professional practices that are part of it that include having a process in place, doing risk assessments, doing a business impact analysis, building plans, having incident emergency response plans, awareness and training, testing your plans, crisis communications, and coordinating with external authorities. So in each one of these 10 practices, we do a maturity model I'll talk about a little bit later, where we're ranking ourselves in 1 to 5 and trying to make continued progress. On the bottom here, you see ISO 22301. This is a new ISO standard for business continuity and resilience. So we're doing everything that we do for ISO 9001 with DRI and doing a crosswalk. What are the items that are identified in ISO 22301? What are we presently doing? Are there any gaps? Where's the evidence? And the process I'm actually using now this year, we're completing that. We're going to have internal audit, and our quality team do an informal audit of us because they're part of the process, but they're kind of disinterested parties. This is not their main role, but the value in quality and the value in audit when it comes to ISO, they know how to ask questions. They know how to dig into details. They know how to read people. They know how to read the process. So I'm very excited to be working with them on all of this. There's many other ISO standards that are out there that are peculiar to teams that you may be auditing. There's an ISO standard for payment cards, for financial institutions, for IT services, for various things. So I'm sure you come across this in the scope of your audits, depending on the type of organization that you're auditing. Any questions on anything so far?
I don't see any, Mike. The ISO audits for the 22301 and the 9001, those are separate audits that you have to undergo each year, correct?
That's correct. All of them, you identify the facilities or locations or the process that you're auditing. So for ISO 22301, that is a new standard, a new ISO standard, and we're kind of embracing that now. We'd like to be labeled as a resilient organization. Other companies that have done this, it's beneficial to them in this way. So if we get OE surveys, original equipment, our manufacturer, our customer surveys, there was an earthquake in China. Some of the raw materials that are being sourced in there are very unique. They could be single or sole source. We'd like you to complete this 47 question form on how it affects you. We come back with either a one-pager, if we could come back and tell them, hey, we've gone through this. We have a process in place. We're actually ISO certified as a resilient organization. Here's the document. And then there's no need to answer these surveys. Also, at the end, we're able to say to them, by the way, could you also share with us on how you are ISO certified? So yeah, they're separate, Bill, but they're all very important. And typically we do them annually. In the body of the ISO standard, they may keep the questions the same for a couple years. And in the third year, they'll totally change it. Or they'll find something that's a big risk that they want you to focus on, and it gets updated. Okay, let me go on to the next slide. You know, there's obvious benefits of having a resilient organization, but let's agree on a few things, on a definition when we talk about resilient organizations and resilient individuals or people. So when it comes to an organization, these are some of the terms that they're common, you see them used. Organization's ability to rebound, to embrace, to adapt, recover rapidly, tackle issues, manage risk, continually improve. All of this creates a competitive advantage. You could see what plays out in the media when you see that there was a ransomware attack, or there was a facility explosion, or there's a geopolitical event. There's something that affecting a single facility in an organization. How did they deal with it? How did their stock price react? Did it rebound quickly? Did it even dip? That's when you see an organization is resilient. A resilient individual, you could tell when someone's resilient if they're strong, they're persistent, they're tenacious, they're tough, you have good mental strength, they're optimistic, they handle stress well, couple of other things when it comes to competency behaviors. Do they have a sense of humor? Do they have gratitude? Are they optimistic? For me, I think it's important to be in shape, to be a survivor. So a key concept we have here, and as you referenced that I write about in my book, Bill, is you hit the sweet spot, the optimal point when you have a resilient individual leading a team in a resilient organization. When you have a common focus on people, on operations, and it's all resilience, it's really a good team effort. So I would suggest when you're using the term resilience, you refer back to some of these definitions here. Anyone, any questions on any of this or any other terms that you see as being part of resilience you'd like to talk about?
I don't see any questions at this point, Mike.
Okay, great. Let's talk about the benefits of resilience. First, an obvious benefit is your shareholders know that regardless of the many challenges you face, you're going to be okay. When there's events that are affecting your country, global operations, they're playing out in social media, and it has no effect on you, that builds shareholder confidence. When your leadership, your strategic leadership team is talking to the investors on a quarterly basis, and a topic comes up and they talk to it and they say it had minimal effect on us. When you have an event that occurs, you could have some property impact, property loss. If you have minimal business interruption, that's another key thing that's very important. Your associates, and we call it, our associates are our employees, they know that they're our number one focus. No matter what incident you face, they're going to be okay. They know that. Anytime we have an event, we gather the team and we're talking, our number one concern is our associates. We want to make sure they're okay, their families are okay, the community is okay. We need to get a report on that. Consistency with supplier contractual requirements. That's another thing. You want to make sure that you're looking at your key customers, you're looking at your suppliers, you're looking through the whole value stream of supply chain, logistics, transportation, second, third tier suppliers. You know that you're having a good relationship with them. You've identified what risks might be common to you, and you have a plan to bridge the gap. Showing business value is key in everything that we do. You do it because it's a good thing to do. You do it, it's a nice thing to do. Everything we do, we focus on showing business value and meeting the needs of our customers. As I said earlier, continual improvement is a focus on everything we do. If we have a significant event that occurs, it could last a week, it could last multiple weeks. The UAW strike, for example, lasted 50 days, and we were part of that. We were monitoring that. The key thing at the end, we do an assessment, we do a gap analysis. Our plans were good. Did we have any gaps? What are we going to improve? We're going to improve it. We're going to test it. We're going to validate it. Then we check again when we go to the next one. Also, standards compliance. You heard me talk about the importance of ISO standards or anything else that's part of doing business. You want to make sure that it's supported well, and that is also part of resilience. I think next point, Bill, we were addressing the next question in the queue.
Right, yeah. So for the CPE folks, here's your second checkpoint question. Again, Michelle, let me know when it looks like people are pretty much completed and you can go ahead and advance the slides. But so what you were just talking about there, Mike, I'll talk a little bit on the side while people are answering.
Sure.
So you always hear about when you have an event or a test that you do a lessons learned. So that seemed to be what you were talking about there on your improvement step. So that's real life then, correct?
Correct. As you're involved in any kind of incident, you're already making notes of things that worked well and things that may need a little bit of improvement. So what we like to do, we use Microsoft tools. We use Teams, we use their survey, and we'll construct a survey that we send out to our audience of our key participants, like as the event is coming to a conclusion. And in there, we'll ask some very pointed questions where we get the response from them. Our next step in that, we get the feedback and we'll consolidate it into a spreadsheet, into a checklist of key takeaways. What we'll do is we'll have an action item identified. In the form, there'll be a space for a responsible party, for a timeline to get it completed, and when it is completed. So we like to close the gap. Some of them may be long-term. For example, we do annual hurricane planning here. You're probably aware of that when you were here, Bill. So hurricanes are the most significant property damage related event, or natural incidents as well. We had a big tornado affect us in Tupelo last year that we will see. Why are they so big? Well, no matter how you plan for them, they're going to be severe. But if you take certain actions to protect the facilities, to protect your people, to protect the business, you're going to minimize the impact on your property and on business interruption. So what we do on an annual basis here, we have annual hurricane planning. It starts April 1st. June 1 is when hurricane season starts. So between April and June, we engage a team of about 16 different functions, and plus the facilities that could be impacted. And what we talk about is what were some key takeaways from last year? Where did we have gaps? What are we doing about it? And is there any help needed? Then around June 1, we'll have a report out to our leadership, to our operational leadership in the Americas and global, and talk about that. Each team's ready to talk about what happened last year, what were the issues, how we're closing the gap, and it really gets to team focus. That's the target. June 1, are we ready? And then from June throughout November, everybody's on standby throughout hurricane season to address it. And what we find is the last couple years, we've had really nothing significant that had happened around hurricane season, but the issue that we did have was winter storms that occurred the last couple years. So you think about that. If you're planning for hurricanes, you're really ready for any natural incident, for wind, for flooding, and you're already continually improving upon what you do.
Right. Yep. So then it always gets better for the next time.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right. So let's talk about resilient deployment. So to succeed in operational resilience, you have to have a toolbox with some pretty powerful tools. And I'm going to talk about some of that here. First, you need to have a policy. Your organization needs to support business continuity, so you need to have a policy in place. It talks about having a team, having structure, what it's based upon. You also have a charter. A charter typically is for your governance committee. It defines who's on the committee, what their role is, what steps you're going to take to help support that policy. When we talk about project plan, various organizations use different tools to identify what they have as far as risks, what their plan is for the year, and how they're going to address it. So let me kind of talk to that on what we do here at Goodyear. I don't know how many of you have used an A3, an X matrix, or a Y chart. These are all like problem-solving tools that are based in lean, continual improvement thinking. The A3 is very interesting. The A3 is a ledger 11 by 17 sheet of paper. There's some folks years ago when you would go work at Toyota, your first project, you were giving an A3, and it would be your project to figure that out, how you're going to complete the A3 and follow throughout the year. Part of that is identifying through a SWOT analysis what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to take a look at how did things go last year. Talk about your hypothesis, analyzing what went well, what didn't, what do you need to do to make an improvement throughout the year, and you get some objectives out of that. That's the A3. An X matrix looks at what's your deliverable for us to be the most resilient global tire manufacturer. So to do that, how do you want to look 3 to 5 years out? To accomplish that, what are you going to do 1 to 3 years out, 2 to 3 years out? To do that, what's your plan for next year and what are your resultant objectives? There's also Y charts that do a SWOT analysis as well, and it leads up to objectives. So one of the things, let me reference on objectives, are here at Goodyear, we have a unified objective for all our critical team members. I'll talk about the team a little bit later. I have a slide on that, on how we're organized, how we're structured. But the objective for critical associates at Goodyear is to participate in all activities that relate to operational resilience and business continuity throughout the year. How do we do that? We participate in all our surveys, using all our software, participate in all actual events and crises, participate in after-action lessons learned, engage your teams, and focus on continual improvement. We have a objective setting process here where all our associates are evaluated through what we call GTMS, Goodyear's Global Talent Management System. You're assigned objectives, you align with your manager, you do frequent check-ins, a formal 6-month and annual check-in. And we tell our team members, if you're part of business continuity, put this objective there, we'll automatically set it out to you. It's like getting an easy A in college. Participate. You have good knowledge. You have strength that you're bringing to the team. You make the team stronger. So all of this with the project planning ends up in objectives. Blocks of work. I don't know if any of you have gone through a blocks of work exercise. What we do there is you take a spreadsheet, you identify all the key activities and items you need to address throughout the year. You assign whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, what cadence you're following, and then you put in how many hours you expect to spend on that. So think about that. In a year, you have 52 weeks, 80 hours. From that, you subtract your vacation time. Let's say you have 4 weeks of vacation. You have holidays. You subtract all the time out of a normal work week that you would have, and you assign 80% of the value to that. So out of 80 hours, you can have effective time that you're working that is 1,700 hours, let's say. So if your blocks of work projected out through the year severely exceeds that, you've got an issue. You go to your management or you have a discussion with various teams on, hey, what's in our job jar? What are things we need to do this year? Are they really critical? What can we scale back? And someone comes to you and says, hey, I need you to take on this project. You can say, look, let me evaluate my blocks of work. What can I do, what I can't do, and see how we may need to make some adjustments. We have an annual scorecard where we have KPIs that align back to our project plan, to our objectives. I'll share some of that with you here in a little bit. And that are key drivers of our team's success. And then how do we track to our plan? Well, we have what we call our annual operating plan. We do that through a week of resilient deployment. So at the end of the year, we've assessed what is our maturity model telling us, where do we have gaps, what is our A3 X matrix or Y chart defined for next year we should be concerned about. We lay out a plan for the year. For me, I work directly with our 4 key leaders in our business units to determine how they're going to implement the objectives, how they're going to align with our annual operating plan. So it becomes not global, it becomes a regional one. They share that with their operational leadership. And those are our marching orders then for the next year. That's how we follow through in a regular cadence and monthly calls. How are we tracking to plan? Formally, we look at a quarterly report on that. So everything you hear me talking about, and we keep repeating this, it's continuous or continual improvement. You have that mindset, you have that culture. We're always looking at things as, all right, these are our objectives. How did we do? What are gaps? What do we need to improve upon? And then plan, do, check, act, test it once again. There's a lot that we covered here. So let me pause for just a second, Bill, and see if there's any questions.
I do not see any, Mike. Looks like you're good to keep going.
So let's look at our focused deployment to support and sustain resilience. There's 5 key things here that tie to our objectives and our annual operating plan. One is to have an aligned global and regional roadmap. We want to make sure we're all on the same journey together. All right, if we're aligned with our regions, global is aligned with region, all our facilities will be aligned with it as well. When I say facilities, I'm talking manufacturing and non-manufacturing, because 40% of our associates and our business is in non-manufacturing, so it's just as important. We have a maturity model that we track. We have objectives that are based to that. So in each of those 10 professional practices, we're looking at how we're progressing on a level 1 through 5 to continually improve. Operational resilience governance. You'll see in a minute how our team is structured. We have leadership support at all levels because we execute well. I've been through, now it's over 3,200 incidents, crises, or BC events in my career here at Goodyear and also at Nestle and Stouffer hotels. And there's things that continue to repeat themselves. And the thing that we continue to see is most effective is a team effort in our planning, response, recovery, and restoration. Supporting defined people capability. We make a great effort to do awareness and training. We have weekly messages we give in a internal messaging system called Goodyear Now. We have monthly leadership messages that we send out. We have training that we do anytime we have anything significant that's in our scorecard that we're addressing. And then benchmarking and continual improvement. I'm a member of the conference board. I don't know if any of you are members of that or have heard of it. It's large companies that agree to join this organization. It's based out of New York, and we benchmark. We share best practices. It's been a real asset to me here since I've been a member of that group for about 3 years here at Goodyear. Also, I'm a member of DRI International. You heard me say they certify people. Well, after the hurricanes that we worked through and we executed so well, I was asked to join the board of directors. So I'm on the board of directors of DRI International as well. So we work with them, and when some really sharp, smart individuals like Bill Heaven reach out to me and say, hey, Mike, we'd like to talk to you and talk with our audit team, I look at that as a good opportunity for benchmarking. I'm happy to share what we do with our audit teams. I'm looking forward to getting your feedback. That helps me validate that we're on the right path. And anytime I have an opportunity to talk to a group, a conference, or be somewhere and share what we do, I always get one or two key takeaways that really help me. So I'm really glad to be with the team here and to be aligned with this. Let's go to our next slide here. So our strategic elements. You heard it. We talk about what's our purpose? Why do we exist? We want to be the most resilient global tire manufacturer. We get into the detail on our maturity model of excellence. What does good look like? What's better? What's best? Do we want to go there? Is there a lot of effort for us as far as time, people, or cost to make an improvement where we're pretty good where we want to be in some of those 10 professional practices? Our governance, we want to have consistent alignment with our regions. We want to make sure we execute well. A lot of what I'm talking about here, and I share in conferences or to other groups, someone may look at it and say, hey, he's sharing everything that they do here. And this is a common theme throughout my book as well. It's all about the execution. You can share something with someone, but when you got to roll up your sleeves and execute it, that's when the work starts. And you see that playing out in your audits as well. Main thing is we want to, like I said, we think we do a pretty good job of everything we do, but there's always a gap, something that we can improve upon. And supporting the team capabilities, want to have the right people in the right roles. You'll see that we have certain functions where we have a primary role, we have an alternate role. One of my biggest concerns, really, if someone asks me, what keeps you up at night? It's really not the events that we're going to be working through, is do we have the right people in a position to succeed? Part of that is because, since post-COVID, people are going into new roles, people get promoted, they move on, they retire. So you get a comfort level in working with certain people. Are the people transitioning in? Do they have the right knowledge level? Are they resilient as well? And then the benchmarking, I'm always interested what world-class and best-in-class is. That we're able to share that with our leadership and say, hey, if we want to take a step up, these are the things that we need to do, things that we need to budget for. Or we could say, hey, we're doing pretty darn well. We're executing pretty well, and we could take some solace in that too. Let me go on to our plan for 2024. This diagram shows how at the end of the year in December, you heard me talk about our resilient deployment. We're aligned with our regions. What are we doing heading into 2024? We did that last year. We start to execute, we start to communicate, and really in January, everything gets underway. It gets underway in December, but we're focused on that in January. By March, we're already looking at our maturity model. What do we need to do to modify that, to do the survey we're going to do later in the year? Is it aligned with our objectives? We continue to make quarterly adjustments on our roadmap through our process till about June. You'll see all of the items that you'll see in a minute on our scorecard we want to have them completed by about the end of the third quarter. The reason for that is come November, we're surveying our audience as well. And when I say our audience, it's all our major manufacturing locations and critical functions. We could be talking anywhere from 60 to 80 survey respondents that we're getting back in those 10 practices to see where we need to improve. And then continual improvement, want to focus on that in December and look to where we're going for next year. Here's a calendar of activities. So these are some of the items that we're looking at doing in our scorecard. Want to make sure on a monthly basis our annual operating plan's on target. When you see Goodyear Ready, we use business continuity software called Fusion Risk Management. We branded it Goodyear Ready. We do our risk assessment first in March. Next, we do our business impact analysis. What is most critical to you by the end of May? Then we're focused on tabletop exercises. So Bill talked earlier about tabletops. It's a very effective means of testing and validating your plans. By June, we have some good momentum going. We're executing well. We want to test our plans. We do a global exercise. Like this year in the middle of June, I'm going to be doing an IT-based ransomware exercise. I expect us to have about 500 participants in this exercise. We also have a recommendation for our teams to do their own mini tabletop exercise. They're simple to do. You can have it when you have a meeting. Just present a scenario, walk through it, look for gaps, see how people respond. And the next time you have a meeting, did you implement improvements? Are you ready? Every time you're exposing your team in a discussion or through an exercise to a risk, a crisis, or an event, you're doing well. You're getting them better prepared. So we like to do that. We have a crisis management one-pager. It's a document front and back that identify what's an event, what's a incident, what's a crisis, what's a BC event, how do we report major incidents, who plays what role, and the key functions, who they are in that specific facility. As I said, we also focus on non-manufacturing. We have 40% of our associates and a chunk of our business that are involved in retail stores, at commercial tire service centers, at warehouses, at regional offices, and they're important as well. As we go to the next slide, we're talking about governance, being operationally focused, regional, tactical teams, functions. All of this is important. I'm going to show our org chart here in a minute. Another key thing is your title, role, and responsibilities are very important. You know that in your organizations, you see that playing out. You know how you stand in the pecking order based on job functions and the impact you have. That's all very important. So we like to keep an eye on that as well. And with that, let me turn it over to you, Bill, where we turn to our next question.
Great, Mike. Mike, thanks. Sorry, I was on mute there for a second. So for those of you looking for CP today, this is your third question. So just give you another 15, 20 seconds here, and then we'll move on and let Mike wrap up. All right, there you go, Mike.
Thanks, Bill. And please keep in mind, all these slides are in the deck, and I think you're going to share this with the team, right, Bill?
That is correct.
So on a couple of these slides, I'm just going to breeze through it so we do have time at the end for some questions, because I know we have a few. We report up through global operations, also through EHS and business continuity, 2 full-time equivalents. We have those 16 functions there on the right that are tactical team members. We all have a primary and alternate role there. And then each of the regions has a similar setup plus facilities. I call this the Goodyear 400. So we have about 400 associates that all but 2 of them are part-time equivalents. Everybody's part-time equivalent in this. At some point in time, what they do is primary. Their main role is secondary. It will be the most important thing they do to participate with us. So that term Goodyear, the Goodyear 400, it sounds like a Netflix series, but it's really the name of the 400 associates that are part of our team. You talked briefly about turning risks into opportunities. So annually, we do a risk assessment. You saw that in our scorecard. So we're asking, what are the types of risks? What's the probability? What's the impact? We also track events and crises during the year. You heard me say we had 113 last year. We're tracking them. Did we get involved less than a day to a week, more than a week? So we look at those two things around the third quarter. We also look at external advice on trending risk. I'll look at what other organizations, what BlackRock, our biggest investor, is telling us we need to focus on. How about the World Economic Forum? What are they predicting? What about DRI? What are they saying? What's trending to next year? We'll put together our top operational risks. Then we're focused on that on a frequent basis. And let me bring up the term polycrises. So this is a term that most recently the World Economic Forum referenced. What that means is multiple concurrent risks, incidents affecting you at once. So no matter how good you are, when you have multiple incidents occurring, and that's the trending event now in 2024 and going into 2025, you're going to have some issues because of the bandwidth, what you got to deal with. But the more work you do in advance and what we're doing to prepare our people to be resilient, having resilient team members, a resilient business, it betters our odds of success. Let me just spend a couple minutes on our work with internal audit and on the surveys. And by the way, I do want to add, in my book, I dedicate 5 pages of this to the importance of internal audit. Internal audit, I meet with them typically right about now. I do a presentation at a town hall to our internal audit team, a global meeting, and we talk about what are the items that we want to audit through business continuity going into this year. I actually do a presentation as well. We talk about some of the significant events. It creates impact with them to know the importance of business continuity and operational resilience. They embed these questions when they go out and they do a week-long audit at a facility. Now, the primary goal of internal audit when they go visit our facility is financially based audits. And they look at risk a little bit differently than we do. We look at operational risk, but they're focused on other business risks as well. But they'll spend a couple hours with the contact and business continuity and the facility manager. Some of the questions they're going to ask are you aware of our incident-related policies? How are you communicating this throughout the facility? What are some of the top risks you're concerned about here? What are your critical processes? Are you aligned with the region? Can you show me evidence of having done a test of your plans? Show me some of the documents you have. And then they ask for process improvement suggestions. So the internal audit checklist is really a lot of value. And I said earlier, as we've implemented our maturity model over the years, having internal audit go out there and asking some of the same questions and looking for validation from what we expect has been of tremendous value to us. Objectives of our 2024 audit. These are some of the things that we look at, and the terminology we use are the business continuity, contact, plant leadership team, et cetera. These are actually some of the points that our internal audits, they're asking. In non-manufacturing, do you use a 1-pager, a 3-pager, a playbook? Are they using software? Are you aligned with the ISO standards, for example? Do you have clarity on what are incidents, crises, and BC events? And as I said earlier, I used to be responsible for property protection at Nestle, and I worked with auditors. Auditors know how to ask questions. They know how to delve into any subject matter. They're trained well, and they know how to read people. So it's very important for us when we get the results back. And I'm happy to share with you, when we started doing this, we would get many, many findings at our facilities, because out of the 14, 15 questions asked, maybe half of them, they needed to validate. They needed to have additional evidence that they didn't have. We got back our most recent audit. It's a semi-annual summary from internal audit. We had over a dozen locations audited, 0 findings. That means we're executing well. Our facilities are aligned well with our regions and global. I'm really happy to share that. I was thrilled to see that last week. So when we talk about benchmarking here, you've heard a lot about what I've talked about. I'm really interested in hearing from the team if we can have a discussion. Do you see something similar? Are you seeing organizations do what we do across other companies when you go out to do audits? How do you validate compliance requirements? Is it similar to what we do here? What are some of the findings you had, and how do they get closure on them? So these are all key things I'm always interested in hearing about. And with that, before I turn it over to you, Bill, let me reference this statement we use closing in many of our meetings. The only thing harder than being resilient is explaining why you aren't. you could see that we've put a lot of time and effort, and we do have very strong excellence in operational resilience. So the bar is set pretty high. We don't want to come back and say that we didn't do the right steps. We didn't take additional steps to be there. So this is a message we continue to deliver to our teams. And also, let me give reference to my book. Thanks for allowing me to add this, Bill. There's a QR code there that takes you to my landing site for my book. When you get published, you create a landing page so people see what you're all about. That's also a link to jankoresilience.com. And you'll see it gives a highlight, an overview of the 8 chapters of my book, why I wrote it, what we're interested in sharing with the team, and gives them an opportunity to go to either Amazon or Routledge to get a copy of my book. Anybody that I know, when I see they have a copy of a book, I'm happy to sign it, happy to endorse it. And with that, Bill, let me turn it back to you and see if there's any questions, and maybe we could talk a little bit about that benchmarking before we conclude.
Great, thanks, Mike. Let's get one last logistical thing out here for those wanting CP. Go ahead and answer yes or no. And again, if you answer yes, Michelle will get your certificate out in the next few days, and then we'll move on to see if we have any questions. I think we've got a couple queued up here, but again, Mike, if we start running out of time, again, I want to thank you very much for your time today. As the audience can, I'm sure, can see, Mike is very good at what he does, and he gets it. So I know that a lot of these companies in attendance today might not have an internal audit, but Mike's figured out that being audited isn't a bad thing. It's a way to get things done and get attention. So if you're in a smaller company, just get the ear of the president or the CEO and use them as like your audit team to make sure that you're getting your gaps addressed, because like Mike pointed out, everybody's going to have those gaps. I think we have a couple questions, don't we, Michelle?
Yes, we did get a couple that were submitted. The first one is, how would you advise a small to medium-sized business to get their business continuity BC plan started?
Great question, Michelle. And by the way, thanks, Bill, for the recognition at the end. I do appreciate it. So here's some advice. So listen to my elevator speech. When someone asks, what do you do? I would say we identify incidents, risks, critical processes, and then we plan for them to occur and how they're going to be affected. So look for others who have an interest in these topics in your organizations. Don't be a lone ranger. Remember, it's a team effort. You'll see that the whole concept of lead, follow, guide the way, get other people involved. So there's a couple of sites that let me share with the team. You could write this down. It includes ready.gov, DRI International, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They have templates that you can use. Free. Anything that's from the government is free. DRI, it's certification based, but they also share templates. So take a look at those templates. Some are very basic, some are more in depth, and use them as a starting point. But the 2 things you really need when you get started: leadership support. Find out if you can attach to a leader in your organization. You're going to need some funding. When I say funding, I mean, so you're allowed to work on this. You have time. Maybe you can attend a workshop, a seminar, a conference to get some better knowledge in it. So that's a good way to start, Michelle.
Right. Yeah, those are some good points. And what I heard within Mike's presentation is, you as you could tell from the meticulousness of his presentation, that he's very prepared. And that's one of your key things with business continuity is, don't wait till the event happens. Even if you're not that good at a tabletop, you can kind of, like Mike said, walk through one and then improve. So do the improvement when it's low stress, as opposed to being like really behind the 8 ball.
Good point, Bill.
Any other questions, Michelle?
Yes, we have one more. What is the most common mistake that you see organizations make when implementing a BC plan?
Another good question, Michelle. So sometimes people know a little bit about it, but not all of it. You need to stay technically current with what when you do develop a plan. So let's say you go to ready.gov, you Chamber of Commerce, DRI, you download a template, you complete it. Don't make it a document that sits on a shelf. You need to keep it technically current. If you have significant business changes, a reorganization, anything that's new that you're encountering, a new line of business, make sure you update your plan because you got a new critical process. If you're without it, what are you going to do? The other thing is get the right people involved. You want to have people who have that knowledge base or can get the knowledge base and risks, what's critical to help you in your planning. And like I said earlier, when we kicked it off, align with your organization's mission. If someone asks you why you're doing this and you can fall back on, hey, we're trying to prevent risk to the company. This is how we support the organization. If you're adding business value, nobody's going to question that.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mike. Again, for all those on the webinar today, if you have any questions or anything, just feel free to reach out to me. I'll relay them on to Mike, and he's always willing to help. And I'm sure he'd give us a few minutes to give us an opinion. But he's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so thankful that he was able to take some time out to help us out with this webinar, and I really appreciate it. And for those of you,
thanks, Bill.
And for those of you on the webinar, for a save the date, May 22nd is going to be our next webinar, and we're looking at probably the changes to the PCI DSS regulations. They're coming out with PCI 4.0 soon, so that's what we're working on for May. So again, thanks everyone. I hope you found Mike's talk worthwhile. I certainly did, and thanks again, Mike, and everybody have a great day.
Very welcome, Bill. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Right, thanks,
have a great
everyone.
week.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.